The story of the steel drum begins in Trinidad in the 1930s, when street band skirmishes led to the ban of skin drums. So people improvised and made drums from thick bamboo poles, car parts, tins, and finally oil barrels. They came up with a whole new sound without skipping a beat. When people first started pounding on steel instruments, they inadvertently dented them. That's how they discovered that each dent produced a different pitch. So now steel drums are dented on purpose. To make a drum head, they cut a piece of steel into a circle. They weld a metal ring onto it, and then they position a metal shell or skirt on the ring and weld it in place. The drum is held in a big clamp, while a worker pinpoints the drum head's exact center. He places a measuring guide there, using it to mark radial lines from the center to the rim. Each line is 10 degrees apart. As the drum turns, he draws circular lines to make a grid. Now he pounds the head of the drum with a pneumatic hammer, using the grid as a guide to ensure the work is done evenly. It takes 8 hours of hammering to transform the drum into a bowl-like shape. This is called sinking the drum. Then, with a special guide for curved surfaces, a technician measures out another grid inside the bowled drum head. He outlines the notes that are about to be hammered out. In this case, a high B and an E. Then he hammers down the steel around each one to shape the note. Getting this right takes skill and a lot of time, up to 50 hours. He trims the drum skirt to the correct length and tapes a stencil of the company logo onto the skirt. This device is an electrical etching machine. It uses acid and electrical current to eat away the steel exposed through the stencil. Now, a technician wields an ultrasonic thickness probe. She presses it against a note. Using high-frequency sound waves, the probe measures the steel's thickness to within a fraction of a millimeter. She grinds down the notes where needed. Using a scribing tool, she scratches a line around each note so it'll be visible to the player. Now it's time to make sure they've struck the right note. To tune a steel drum, the technician plays a note with a stick and then dents it with a hammer to adjust the pitch. You have to have an ear for this job. He hammers the note until it sounds right. Sometimes he turns the drum upside down to knock out a note from the underside. For the fine-tuning, he relies on an electronic tuner. A microphone delivers the sound to it, and the lines on the screen tell him if the note is in tune or not. Next, he burns the border of each note with a blowtorch. Then he cools it down with water. The process tempers the steel, making the notes more resonant. He tunes the drum again, checking for flaws. After the drum is chrome-plated, he tunes it a final time. It's taken 120 hours to make this steel drum. Now it's time to take a break and party to the steel band sound.
The conga drum may be a staple of Latin American music, but it developed from an ancient African drum, made from an animal skin stretched over a hollow tree trunk. Today, they stretch the hide over a wood or fiberglass cylinder. As you're about to see, making congas takes plenty of hands-on skill. These congas are made of ash, a wood that has good acoustics. That means sound resonates off it rather than being absorbed into it. First, the drum maker cuts the curved slats that will form the drum's body, called the shell. He traces a slat-shaped template on a rectangular piece of wood. Then, using a bandsaw, he cuts along the trace line, creating a curve on the outside and inside surfaces. Then he moves to a bench saw, a saw whose blade can be adjusted to different angles. He clamps the piece onto a template and angles the edge. He flips the piece over and angles the other edge. The drum maker applies carpenter's glue to both edges and clamps the slats together in a circle on a specially designed form. The number of slats per drum varies depending on the diameter of the shell. The larger the diameter, the lower the congas sound. The glue dries in 24 hours. It comes off the form looking like this bongo shell, but taller. The drum maker now mounts the dried shell on a wood lathe. Using a tool called a wood gouge, he shears off about 6 millimeters, rounding the outside of the shell. Then he uses a series of woodworking tools to add decorative detailing. Once that's done, he smooths the shell's surface using 3 progressively finer grains of sandpaper. Then he either leaves the wood its natural color or stains it. A thick coat of oil-based lacquer protects the wood from both dryness and humidity. Now for the essential hardware. First, side plates made of chrome-plated steel. Their job is to anchor the drum's animal skin head. They're bolted to the shell. Next, the drum maker feeds a steel strip through a bending machine. Its high-pressure rollers curve the strip, forming the drum's rim. Then he rivets V-shaped steel pieces onto the rim. Elsewhere in the workshop, they prepare the cowhide that will become the drum's head. First, they soak it in a corrosive bath of cold water and lime. This literally burns the hair off the hide. After 2 or 3 days, they remove the skin and scrape off any stubborn hairs. Then they stretch it over a circular frame, leaving it to dry at room temperature for a couple of days. After chrome plating the rim, it's time for the final assembly. They stretch the head over the shell and clasp it in place with the rim. They hook the V's to the side plates, then adjust the tension to tune the instrument. The last step is to trim off the excess skin. Now, the musical handiwork can begin.